Hello. Episode 22, I believe.
Yeah.
Can't believe we've done 22 podcasts.
No.
It's flown by, hasn't it? What do you
22
think?
weeks. Yeah, that's
That's pretty insane, isn't it, actually,
yeah,
when
that's
you
nearly
think
half
about
a
it?
year.
I know, God, the year's going so quick, it's unreal. Hope everybody's well and enjoying the incredibly hot weather. It's been, pretty much around the whole country, isn't it? 30, 31 degrees, which I love. I love the heat, but it's the humidity which just gets me. And one of the days it was like 96 humidity. Oh gosh, that's hard work, I tell you. So episode 22. So what have we been up to this week then, Rich?
Well, this week, so we've been down to Porsche Experience Centre, done some work down there for Porsche Cars Great Britain.
So for anybody that doesn't know, just in case you haven't listened to the previous one, so it all sounds very fancy, but it's not. But we're Porsche driving consultants. So in other words, that's a very fancy name for we're instructors and coaches for Porsche GB. So we did 3 days at the Experience Centre there. So anybody that buys a new Porsche can come along, can't they? And have half a day with us, or you can pay for a course, that kind of thing as well. So so we did a mix of that. It's always nice to be down at Silverstone, and actually it was extra special because the F1 had just happened and they were doing an official test. I don't know for how many days, do you?
Well, it was 3 or 4 days, but they were tyre testing, weren't they? Because they're going to bigger wheels next year, going to 18-inch wheels.
Yeah.
So there was only 3 teams running, wasn't there? But they ran a car a day.
So Perez was the first I saw.
Yeah.
Going around, and then we had Mick Schumacher.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting actually, because then suddenly this 91 Jordan appeared, which obviously sounds very different to the new cars.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And Mick said he was very privileged. He was wearing his dad's exact helmet, and he was driving around doing that. And I think Karun Chandok has also done a bit in that car as well, so you might see
there'll be a feature on it somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, I'm guessing Sky F1 there'll be a feature at some point. But it was lovely to hear the old cars again. I mean, I think they've made a great improvement with the sound of the new cars, because let's face it, when it first started, it was such a shock going from these really noisy engines to something almost, really quite flat. But they've done a good job of making it sound a lot better, I thought, listening to go round.
But it still stood out when the Jordan came round.
Oh, it did, it did. But it was nice watching them, and then Sebastian Vettel was out, wasn't he? He seemed to do the most laps, to be honest. Stroll appeared at one point, Mazepin.
Albon was out in the Red Bull.
Yeah, because I think Max was meant to do it, but after his accident, he obviously, I guess as a precaution, isn't in the car straight afterwards. So in recovery, let's say, because they always worry, because his incident was 51 Gs, and we'll go into this a bit later, but obviously they worry about internal organs, damage. There has been issues with people in the past, and they jump out the car, they're fine. They can even be fine for a few days, and then something horrific happens. So Albon was out of the car. I always wonder what it must feel like. You've been not sacked from the team, but demoted down to...
Demoted, that's the way to put it.
Yeah. Down. He's doing DTM, and it must be very weird being back in the car. And still, hey, gosh, there's a lot of worse things to do, right?
Oh,
but
absolutely.
It must be a little bit odd, I guess, for Albon. But hey, it was just lovely. And I was watching, I'm a big Sebastian Vettel fan anyway, but I was watching him coming through Maggots Beckett's and then down Hanger Straight into Stowe. And what was lovely is obviously over the actual Grand Prix is so busy, so it's hard to get really up close. But when it's quiet and we were in there and there's hardly anybody around, you really hear when he's on full throttle and when he's like rolling in and then going down the gears. And I couldn't believe into Stowe they actually turn and then start to slow the car and go down the gears.
Oh, it's insane.
And bear in mind, Stowe's the end, so Hanger Straight, the back straight. So after Maggots Beckett's, there's all that long section, and you do think, well, these cars are unbelievable with the grip they have. And
you see them go through the corners, it's just nuts.
Yeah, so it was, obviously it was, we were doing our job, of course, but in between, got a bit distracted and went and watched a little bit of that as well. I put a few videos just of me, on my phone, on the social media stuff as well. So if anybody wants to watch a bit of that, they can. But it's not exactly very professional. But you may get to see a little bit of Seb shooting past, let's say. So yeah, so we've been doing that, and then away from that, what have we been doing?
Well, we've done some driver confidence sessions again. We've been doing some of those, haven't we?
Yeah.
So a little bit of that going on.
Yeah, so we're doing more and more of this. It's really highlighted with COVID and even just things with like people finishing uni, that kind of thing. There's certainly, well, let's start with the uni thing. People pass a test, then they go off to uni, and because it's so expensive to park your car at uni and stuff, people don't, so they leave their car at home. Then they don't really drive for all their time that they're at uni, really. Then come back and finish, and then really lack in confidence, because basically, as soon as you've learned, you really need to keep that going, don't you? And especially when you don't have much experience. So I took out a lovely girl who's pretty much just gone through all of that, but it was almost like sitting with a learner, to be honest. And you think, wow, you know, it's certainly something we've decided we're going to try and help people more with. Okay, that's totally different to all our racing stuff that we do, but actually diversity is great. And at the end of the day, coaching's coaching and getting that reward. Yeah, and then I've done a rehabilitation with a lady who's different reason, through an incident, let's say, lost a huge amount of confidence, and we're gradually building on that. So it's a lot more about the psychology and what's going on underneath, but that's something we're incorporating, isn't it, in our coaching, whether it's rehabilitation or whether it's somebody who's trying to be a professional racing driver. Psychology really runs underneath the whole thing. So yeah, so it's been an interesting week, hasn't it?
Yeah, a bit of a varied week.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Do you think? So road cars then. So
yeah, so we've been talking a lot, haven't we, about, you've got a Golf R at the moment, and
yeah,
we don't know what to
7.5, haven't I?
Yeah, we don't know what to change it for, because the difficult thing is, first of all, is getting a manual car, and second of all, is getting a 3-door car, because getting a manual 3-door sort of hot hatch kind of car, I don't think you can anymore.
Yeah, and hey, I'll totally get the practicality of a 5-door. So I understand more people probably do get 5 doors, but I guess tradition and being a bit, I hate using the word purist, but being a little bit more that way, let's say, personally, and I think you're in the same boat with me here, aren't you, that just the Golf for me has always looked great as a 3-door, and we can make it work as a 3-door, can't we? So it was sad to see with the Mark 8 that's not an option. And the other thing is they've taken away the option for a manual, haven't they?
Yeah, well, I guess if you're Volkswagen, you look at how many manuals and how many 3-doors you sell, and it's probably 5% or whatever it is, and there was no point making it then.
Yeah.
If it was 30%, I don't know what the figures are, I'm making them up, but, you know, I guess that's a decision that Volkswagen have made.
Which I totally get, but I kind of get it for the main cars, but the ones that are more driver focused with performance, I still think there should be the option. Just because, so I've got a manual, and hey, I love auto gearboxes, you know, my favourite being the PDK probably, but you know, these dual clutch systems are so clever and so quick, and that genuinely, no, you don't need a manual. But the reason I like a manual, well, 2 reasons. Firstly, I don't want to go rusty and forget how to use a manual doing my job, but also on the road you can't go, you know, that quick. So I love just being able to time, doing heel and toe, you know, little things like that, and having just extra involvement. A lot of people say, oh, you got more control in a manual. I disagree. I don't think that's true. But it's just the involvement side. So yeah, so it's a little bit of a shame that that's been taken away. So obviously I've been car hunting, haven't I? We've been looking. Yes.
And that's kind of what we come at. So if you want a manual one, it's kind of Civic Type R.
Yeah.
Which gets, you know,
5
anybody
stars.
drives it, raves about the way it drives.
Yeah.
It's just the way it looks, I suppose, really, is the
and
stumbling block.
Don't get me wrong, it's sporty as hell to look at. And I'm one of these funny people, whereas if it's like a I don't know, let's just say a Porsche, you know, GT3 RS, or it's a Ferrari, or it's a Lambo, the more wings and things, the better, the brighter, the better. But for me, but when it comes to cars that are in a different, or how would you put it, different sector.
Well, daily drivers, I suppose.
I just find the Type R, visual-wise, looks kind of like it's trying too hard.
So they do one that doesn't have a big wing on it as well.
Yeah,
you know?
and I think that's a good idea, because to me, on the road from a daily drive, I wouldn't mind something that just is a little bit more discreet. It's not too in your face. But hey, it's probably, if I was going to get a car right now, that's the one I'd lean closest to, because apparently the gearbox in it is meant to be absolutely immense, isn't it?
It's good at anything Porsche, mate, apparently.
Yeah, and a driver's car. So that is really the only thing that, well, it's not the only thing we found that's a driver's car, but, you know, with the manual and everything else. So we started then looking at, okay, for this market, what else is there? So
obviously there's Golf R, but announced this week is the new Audi RS3.
Yeah.
So Audi do an S3, which is essentially a Golf R.
Yeah.
But the RS3 has their 5-cylinder 2.5 litre engine in it, which sounds like an Audi Quattro from the 80s.
It sounds absolutely awesome.
It does make a good noise.
To be fair, just buy it for that. Yeah. But again...
But you've got the same problems in you can't get a manual one, you can only get a DSG one.
Yeah.
They're all 5-door. It actually looks... I think it arguably looks more aggressive than the Golf R.
Yeah, I agree. And you can get a saloon version. And actually, in the past, I've never really liked the saloon version. But the new one, they've really made it look aggressive, and the saloon looks pretty cool. So I think having a 5-door, I'd probably lean towards a saloon.
Yes.
Because it just sort of finishes off the back end for me, because it's aggressive and to be honest, it looks fabulous. They've decided to keep a few more buttons, haven't they?
There's a lot more. It's not all touch screen like the Golf.
Yeah, so even though there is that element to it, they've done a little bit more like some manufacturers where it's like, I don't know, 70% touchscreen, the rest is, you know, your buttons or haptic buttons. Whereas Golf R, they've leaped into predominantly things either being on the wheel or it is all touchscreen, which looks awesome. But on a practicality note, when you're driving, and we know this from, we better not mention too many manufacturer names, but you know, we know some amazing beautiful cars out there, but you want to like move the air vent and you have to go into 5 different screens to get it to move the air vent, and when you're driving you can imagine that's like
And I'm not a big I mean I was in a Mercedes, an AMG A-Class A43, is that what they call it? A40? And I don't like the screens. I think it just looks like, well, Mercedes thought this would be cheaper, stick screens in it, and that's how it comes across to me. I just don't think it worked particularly well.
I mean, I like both. I like the idea of, you know, like when I first saw a lot of manufacturers move away from proper analog clocks and things all to digital display, that I love that you can change all the digital display, but there's something kind of classy. I suppose if you think of like watches, for example, like if you think of a smart watch or something like that, and then you think of a piece of art like a tag, whatever. Sorry, I don't know my watches very well, but a mechanical
Rolex, I suppose, is probably your mechanical Swiss timepiece. Yeah.
And for me, I guess, like for me with cars, I view it a little bit like that. Whereas I like the technology and things need to evolve, but I just hope we don't evolve so much that they've become mobile computers and there's none of this. I do like some traditional clocks and some traditional buttons, not everywhere, not so it looks dated, but just there's some class to it. Whereas when everything's digital, one thing that worries me is technology evolves so quickly on that front, far quicker than the mechanical elements, that you could then have a car that then suddenly looks dated within a year. As we know with like a PC, you know, with sim racing, you get one, you think, right, this is all new, this is the latest thing, and then like 2 months later, oh no, there's a new graphics card, there's a new this, there's a new that. So yeah, I guess it's getting the balance. But hey, I'm not slating these digital displays because obviously things need to evolve. But for me, if I could make my own car, it would definitely be a mix of both for me, wouldn't you say?
Without doubt, yeah.
But yeah, so back to the RS3 then. So sounds fab. Obviously it's a little bit more expensive than the Golf R because it's the RS.
10 grand, isn't it, basically?
Yeah, so it's about 50 starts, I say 50k. I'm sure you can add bits to make it more.
Almost undoubtedly, yeah.
Whereas the Golf R is just shy of 40k. So, you know, so there are differences there. But this, you know, this car is unbelievably quick, isn't it? What did you say it was? The top speed 180?
180 miles an hour it'll do, apparently.
Which is not that you, I guess, unless you take it on a track, I guess you're never going to see that. But yeah, pretty impressive bit of kit.
So we'll see what that's like then.
Yeah. So we have tried, haven't we, also?
Yeah, well, this is another kind of, bit of a cult car it's become, really, which is the new Yaris GR.
Yeah.
And it's been around a bit now, hasn't it? It's probably been around 12 months, I suppose.
Yeah. We were very lucky to be invited down to do a review of it and a drive of it. We got a bit pushed for time because Ferrari also invited us to something we're trying to squeeze perhaps a bit too much in one day. So we've been kindly invited back to spend a whole day with the Yaris GR, haven't we? So we've done a very short drive, taster, let's say, review of the car to give us an initial first insight, and then we're going to go back and do a proper review. So there will be on YouTube a small mini review, but wait for the bigger one, let's say, and then you'll see. But what did you think to it?
Well, I think it was cool. I'm not a massive fan of the way it looks, but I'll come back to that in a second. What's unique about this car is if you go back to sort of all through time, really, if you wanted to race or rally a car, you had to build a certain number of them. It was called homologation. And that was normally low numbers. So things like Group B rallying, everybody remembers that, you had to build 200 cars. So, that's a very, very rare car.
Yeah.
I remember back in the sort of super touring era in touring cars, they had to build something like 1,000 of a certain model before they could race it. Well, that's all changed now. So in rallying, you now have to build 25,000 units of a car before you can rally it. So what people like Volkswagen do is they take a normal Polo, because they build millions of them, and convert it to a rally car. Toyota decided to come at it from a different angle and build a rally car and then try and sell 25,000 of them. Yeah. And that's essentially what this is. So it's a complete fresh piece of paper. Yeah. What do we need it to do? So it's small, it's light, it's four-wheel drive, it's it's manual. Yeah. So they've sold like hotcakes because it's become a real cool car. We said when we were down at Ferrari, we were at a Ferrari launch, and every other car that came in was a Yaris GR.
Yeah, which is kind of funny at Ferrari, but it just shows. Obviously, you get a lot of people that go to Ferrari, they love their cars and they love driving. And of course, with the Ferraris, it's also a piece of art, isn't it? But they love driving. And the thing is, what is this? 30 grand car, 30 grand, isn't it? Yeah. This Yaris Toyota, which I guess, okay, it's a Toyota and it's a Yaris, but it's a proper performance car, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's basically a dialed down, rally car.
Essentially, yeah.
But didn't one of the drivers want it more sloping on the back? Yeah,
so Tommy Mackinnon, who's the head of Toyota team rally team, wanted it more sloped at the back. Yeah. But Toyota said no, we've got to get people in it. So so it's not quite as sloped at the back as it could have been. But,
so I think it probably could have looked a bit cooler, but they had to think of the practical elements. But no, I kind of overall, perspective, certainly for me, I don't know about you, Rich, is that it's great fun to drive, great gearbox, makes you smile, it's quick, sounds good.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, isn't it? I suppose what I was saying before about the RS3, of trying to find cars that are not 200 grand, that are drivers' cars, is quite difficult.
Absolutely. So for me, it ticks everything apart from, and I'm with you on this, its appearance doesn't blow me away. No. Now, I know it's a Toyota Yaris, but I just think...
It looks a bit awkward, I think.
Yeah, I think it could have looked a bit more chunky, a little bit more beefy. Yeah. Like the actual, rally car will look. I think if they could have made it just look a bit more beefy, that would have just, for me, finished it off. But I certainly wouldn't rule one out. I think for 30 grand... if you like driving, that is a car to have. Yes. And it proved it, didn't it, when we were down at Ferrari. So that'll all be on YouTube. But at the moment, it's going to be like a little mini taster review. And then we're going to go back and spend a day with it. So we'll do a lot more like in-car, filming and go through it properly. And, what little details it's got and things, and have a bit of fun with it, won't we? So looking forward to that. So the next bit is driving, isn't it? Yeah,
so I thought this week we'd talk a little bit about running commentaries, which sound a little, when we're doing road stuff, it's a really good way of getting people to focus, because it just, you start to get rid of some of the thought processes that are interfering with what you're doing. So if you start to commentate on things, it helps you to concentrate and it helps you to focus on what you're doing. So we'll just talk a little bit about that, really. Yeah. So running commentary, like I say, helps with concentration. When you're driving on the road, when you start to do a running commentary, it immediately shows you how complex the road environment is.
If you are somebody like I've done it with coaching a lot, okay, just talk me through what you're doing as a commentary, and people initially find it really hard because there's actually
complex
quite
task.
a lot going on. And then I'll do an example and they'll be like, wow, there's so much you're taking in and thinking about and really far ahead and all that kind of stuff. And I guess it's such a good tool to help people recognise where they're currently at, what might be missing. But like you said as well, and I think you're probably going to lead on to this, aren't you, actually, about the fact that it can distract you so your subconscious can do
because driving is like you say, if you try and talk, it's like trying to tie your shoelaces. You can't, it's very difficult to explain how you tie your shoelaces. Well, driving's the same. A guy wrote a book once called Mind Driving, MIND, to try and break down the thought processes that an experienced driver goes. Of course, it fills a book. And it's completely useless, really, because you can't, there's no way you could read it and think, oh, well, I'll do that then, because it just doesn't really work like that. But what tends to happen as a human being is that your self-talk, if you like, your conscious thoughts can quite often interfere with what you're doing. So like we were talking about the confidence driving and people who are apprehensive about driving. It's because of what they're saying to themselves. It's not because they can't drive a car.
Absolutely. And this also ties into racing. So if you get a racing driver who's plateaued and their teammate, just an example, is that little bit quicker, quite often you can go through data and you, as a coach, can look at what they're technically doing, and the technical elements might be really, really good, but that's where we call it self-one, don't we? But your conscious is coming in, and it might be, I can't brake that late. What happens if I hit the wall, or what happens here? All these little, we would perhaps call them demons, but coming out and basically affecting your subconscious, because actually you can do it. And I've used on several occasions the whole Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton thing. Valtteri, there's not many people on this planet that can get as close to Lewis as Valtteri has over one lap in pace. But the reason he struggles under pressure is because of his self-one, beating him up all the time. So that's why often he's quickest on Friday. Then it gets to, right, when it matters, qualifying, and clearly these inner demons come out and this doubt, and it basically, he needs a distraction tool, something to get him away from thinking about that, so the subconscious can flow and do the job, because he has the ability to do it, but it's getting in the way. And that's the same. Road track doesn't matter with driving really, but it can really affect you, can't it?
It can. So
at any stage.
So running commentary can help you to do that. So getting started with it, what I try and get people to do, first of all, is just point out really obvious things. So not everything that's going on, but like shout out all the signposts that you see, or shout out where the junction left, junction right, things like that. Just little bits of detail that give your conscious mind something to focus on. And then start to add a little detail in from there. So where the corner's bending, what the traffic ahead's doing. So not loads and loads of information, but sort of key things. Because what you'll find is if you do that, first of all, you'll start to look for things and you'll start to concentrate and think and plan. But also it does this thing that Kat's saying, where it just helps your subconscious to do more of the work, because you're kind of almost distracting your conscious mind, and it works really well.
Absolutely. So obviously we're talking here a bit more experienced drivers. Of course, initially teaching anybody anything, there has to be the technical element first.
You've got to know what you're trying to do.
And that needs to become subconscious. And then once you're at that point, that's where this really starts to make a massive difference, isn't it?
And you can do the same on track. It doesn't have to be on the road. So if you're driving on track, as Kat was saying, you think, I can't brake this late. So don't think about that then. You've got to try and sort of think about, get a good reference point. So you're going to brake at the reference point. Now you're braking, right, now look at the apex, and you just say to yourself, right, I'm looking at the apex now I'm looking for my exit, and just sort of self-talking yourself around it.
Rather than thinking, can I brake this late? What happens if I do? Blah, 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 and all the negative bits coming in. So there's loads you can do with it, but this is where we've, as coaches, we've raced for many years and we've been coaching, I dread for how long, but we've really incorporated the psychological elements of driving, because in performance, like with our NLP, it's such a big element to how well somebody can achieve success, I suppose. However that looks to them, but that's where this bit, you always have to condition yourself as early as possible. So that's why people are naturally better at it than others. So somebody like Lewis Hamilton will naturally be better at that and have that thicker skin, less demons going on underneath, and that's where the true greats do, don't they? They have that. That's why people quite often call them arrogant, or you know, they're a different breed, or they're more ruthless. And
but he will still have those thoughts. It's just the way he learns to control them.
Absolutely. So moving on to motorsport then.
Yes.
So we covered the sprint race last week because we wanted to do that, you know, and just because of new format, all excited, what did people think, all that kind of thing. I had a lot of people message me, which was lovely. Real divide for sure. A lot of people loved it. Some people said it should be less laps. Rather than 17, it should be 10, make it even more explosive. There's others that feel, oh, it's pointless, you know, what's the point of it? Why don't they just do qualifying and normal? I remember one person saying to me, I've been watching it since 1957 and it's always been this format and blah, blah, blah. Now, of course, a lot of people don't like change, and I understand that totally, but personally, I thought it was great because ultimately we have to face facts with Formula One. The viewing numbers, certainly in the UK, have been on the decline big time. So, of course, they've got to think of ways to change it. Now, in an ideal world, and this is where next year might help, let's have cars with, you know, where they can follow much closer, but they have more power than grip, all that kind of stuff, and make it more like an Indy car, which I think is what they're trying to achieve. Then you can get rid of some of these things and have it like it was, and see true explosive racing throughout. But I think over the time, with tyres and strategies, and you know, it's become very complicated, and people want to watch ruthless racing, basically, don't they? So I thought the sprint race was brilliant, but obviously we didn't cover the main race because we haven't watched it at that point. So so the British Grand Prix that was in the actual race itself was a bit of a eventful one, wasn't it?
So it's probably it'll be one of those things that'll go down and people will talk about for years and years and years. But the inevitable clash that's been coming for a while between Max and Lewis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, there's so many opinions flying around as to who was in the wrong and who wasn't, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, but from the way I look at it, I mean, at first I thought, you know, Hamilton's fault. But I think, to me, it was kind of 50-50. And Alex Palau, who's leading the IndyCar Championship, he said that he would have done the same as either of them, whatever position he was in.
Yeah. I think you've got two bulls in one camp fighting out a championship. And if we look at the history of Formula One, it's always happened at some point.
It was going to boil over at some point.
But in fairness, initially I was like, well, and I've had a big accident at Cox and I couldn't walk properly for 8 months. And what I did is what Lewis did. But I, rather than hit the other driver, I tried to avoid and ended up spinning and then got hit anyway 3 times. So in hindsight, I should have just done what Lewis did and kept my foot in there. But hey, things happen. But it's a tricky corner to overtake on because in a Formula 1 car it's flat for a start. Lando Norris said it's not easy flat, but it's flat. Obviously for Lewis and Max, when you're dicing, it wouldn't have been flat. But I would say there was no intentional with Lewis, I'm going to take Max out, or vice versa.
No, I don't think there was any malice in it.
I think what's happened is Max has been very, very hard on Lewis. And if you look back, and I didn't realise this myself, to be fair, until somebody showed me various clips of this season and how many times Max has chopped his nose off and Lewis has had to basically avoid there being an incident. Now, at the same time, Lewis hasn't been fully down the side when it's happened, and in my opinion, as a racing driver, fully alongside, and then it can be your corner, you can battle it out. But if you're not fully alongside, it's a tricky one. Now there were pictures with people further, you know, when they're down the straight, and Lewis is fully alongside, but as it gets closer to the corner, Max is then obviously braking later and is getting further ahead. I think it was a racing incident. It was really unfortunate. I think basically Lewis had enough. He's kind of in front of his home crowd. He was absolutely determined to get ahead, and he knew after Cox that Red Bull is brilliant through Maggotts Beckett's, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely amazing. So he knew I got to get ahead of him before Cox, or just after Cox, basically. So I think there was an element of I have to do this. But also, I can't be bullied on the track. I'm in front of my own crowd. I think a number of things to why he kept his foot in. And you can overtake at Cox. It's not fair for Christian Horner to say you can't. That's not true.
No, but the Red Bull camp is not a reliable source of as in the same as Mercedes, isn't it? In that situation, they're not going to go against their own side, are they? So they're not the people. They're not the right people to listen to for information. Really.
I agree. I think,
which is why I mentioned Alex Palau, because he's completely partial.
And they were, you know, Ricardo, I think, had said it was Lewis's fault. I think it was a racing incident. I'm really thankful and happy that Max is okay. I've had a big accident there, and it is horrible. You know, such a fast corner, and you know, he hit the tyre wall, and it was 51 Gs. I mean, your internal organs, you know, going through all that, which is hence why he was in hospital for so long. Which does lead us on a little bit, doesn't it? Because he put quite a funny, I can't remember if it was Twitter or Instagram or whatnot, but he was really upset at the end, saying, I'm still in hospital, you know, being monitored at the moment because of obviously what could happen, and something might rupture, blah, blah, blah. And Lewis has won the race, he's celebrating, and he hasn't mentioned anything to do with it. And that seemed to really upset him, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think with good reason, to be honest. You know, I think that was the wrong way for Hamilton to celebrate. He should have been. I understand it's the British Grand Prix, but he should have been first thought.
I hope Max is okay.
I hope Max is okay, because there was somebody who was very badly hurt in the superbikes at the weekend, weren't they? And I can't think which rider it was, but that won the race, and he said, "No matter who's won the race." That was his first thing. He said, "You know, Brad's all right."
Yeah, exactly. And I think,
I don't know, Max wasn't in the position that this superbike rider's in, but
I think Lewis should have initially said on interview, look, first of all, you know, at Cops, I felt it was a racing incident. I felt I had the corner. Obviously, Max felt the same, and it ended how it ended. I got penalised for it, and I got that time back, and I fairly won the race. But I would like to say, you know, I hope that Max is okay. Nothing intentional with what I've done. And my thoughts are obviously with him and the family and hospital, something like that, and then carry on celebrating, but just something. Because to be fair, we have seen it in the sport a lot, especially in more modern era, where especially side-on impacts, where the crumple zones can't absorb so much of the energy, you know, that you can get organs rupture, but not straight away. So there is a genuine reason he was held in hospital for so long, and genuine reason why he then wasn't tyre testing, and why Albon was in the car. So I do think that should have been mentioned, but I'm sure you guys, or some of you guys and girls, will have different views on that. But yeah, I deep down think it was a racing incident. I do agree with the points, so the penalty, because if for anybody who watched the sprint race with George Russell and Sainz, well, they had a coming together. Again, just racing incident. I don't think either were intentionally doing anything. I think basically Sainz thought he had it, and George was running wide, and bang, they hit. But George got a 3-place grid penalty. So, you know, once you've done it for one, you have to keep that consistency. But what are your thoughts on the whole penalty thing? Because, like, I'm getting a bit worried that we've had more penalties than ever this year.
Well, I mean, they've got to let them race, haven't they? This is the point. Johnny Herbert talks about this a lot, where you've got to let them. It's like play on in football or rugby. You know, you think, okay, right, but I think that did need a penalty. I suppose I don't really know. It was because I suppose it's hard to say, but having set the precedent with George.
Yeah.
And Carlos on the day before, they had to give Lewis a penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, it turned out.
I'm just more worried about the penalties in general. So not necessarily that incident, because I do think that was incredibly dangerous. Somebody could have got hurt. I'm not saying Lewis intentionally did anything or vice versa, but it just, you know, ended up with a big accident. So they have to review it and decide whose fault it is. But I just mean in general, like we seem to be getting more and more penalties than we've seen in any other season.
Well, there's been a lot of trouble with track limits, hasn't there, this year, which I think is a bit of a joke, really.
Yeah.
For stuff like that, I mean, it was like they had in Austria the week before, wasn't it, where they were running each other wide into the gravel and everything. But they think once they've done it once, they always have to come and do it again, and it's where do you draw the line? If you've shoved somebody off into the gravel, you should get a penalty, really.
Yeah. What worries me though is this whole, you know, like in football where they fall over and and they make out that they've been really badly taken out. I just don't want it to end up like that, where they know something's going to happen, so they'll make the situation worse, so the other guy gets a bigger penalty, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the answer is, but it's something that's been playing on my mind. We've been seeing more and more penalties, and I've watched Formula 1 since, gosh, I was like 5-6 years old, and okay, from that age I can't remember that much, but as I've got older, I never remembered all these penalties all the time, and it just seems kind of like, yes, you've got to manage it, and there has to be rules, and there has to be safety, but it seems like it's gone a bit, like you say, maybe it's a track limits bit, maybe they need to just have some gravel and grass and other things there to prevent that. Perhaps we've gone too far with the tarmac.
Well, the problem is with the track limits is it's not obvious to people who are not, he lost his lap then, what for? Where if they've bounced through the gravel, it's pretty obvious.
Exactly. So yeah, something, we'll see. I want to mention though about Lando Norris, because I didn't realise, but he has been, he's broken a record for McLaren, hasn't he?
Longest run of points finishes.
Yeah. And it's something, I think it might be 14 races or 15 races.
15, yeah.
In a row now, where he scored points in every race, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. I didn't realise at all that he achieved that. So well done to Lando for that consistency. Not only is he fast, but he finishes races, and he's in the points. And he's still a young lad, and I think a lot of teams will be watching that thinking, man, he's the real deal, this boy. And I think he really is.
Oh, without doubt.
Leclerc, we better mention Leclerc, haven't we? Yeah. As he almost won the race.
Well, what I can't understand is that the first half of the race, he'd completely and utterly got the Mercedes covered. Lewis had no answer to him at all.
Yeah.
So Lewis then gets his 10-second penalty and comes out in a car that's now 2.5 seconds a lap quicker than the Ferrari, and I thought, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. And of course, by the time he caught,
tyres, I think.
I don't know, but he was only on the same tyres. Well, of course, Lewis doesn't have to fight for second place because he catches Valtteri, which tells you something else. Catches Valtteri hand over fist, Valtteri moves over and he catches the Ferrari and passes him. But it was, the Leclerc, was it 3 laps in the end? Yeah. So he led the whole way until 3 laps in the end.
I felt for Leclerc. We're both massive fans of Leclerc, aren't we? You especially, but I am too, for his driving ability. We've probably mentioned this before, but coming up through the junior ranks, the last person to be like him, I suppose, was Lewis Hamilton. Where in every junior rank he was just sort of untouchable, really.
He was, yeah. And he now, because he's in a car that's not at the front, you don't see it as much. But some of the things he does, he drives beautifully.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't always see it because he's not on pole.
Yeah, because the car's not quick enough, but he is dragging that car up there. As is Sainz. I know Sainz had a difficult weekend, but pace-wise, Sainz the same. I think they probably have one of the strongest pairings on the grid.
Yeah.
But the car's just not quick enough. It's like in a straight line. It's just dog slow.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping it's Hungary this weekend that'll suit the Ferrari. We'll see.
But we'll see. Yeah, exactly. Alonso certainly seems to be back, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's back on fire, isn't he?
So which obviously I'm pleased about because I love Alonso. He's my future husband.
Great.
Maybe. But no, he seems to be back on fire, and he showed that in the sprint race, and his just general ability. But anyway, enough on the British Grand Prix. But anybody has any thoughts or anything we've said, love to, we had quite a few messages last week, which was lovely. Please do send either on social media or you can email, whatever suits you guys and girls. But please get in touch. Let us know your thoughts on it. It's always interesting getting other people's perspectives. It definitely changed my kind of, thought process a bit, because I hadn't really appreciated how much Max had been chopping off the nose of Lewis, and you go back through the season, and actually it happened a lot. So and that was through somebody saying, hey, look at this cat. So always love to hear what you guys and girls have to say, so please do honestly get in touch. So on to our interactive bit then. So what is it this week then?
So I thought you could pick, you can have a passenger ride. So you got to pick a driver, a car and a circuit.
Okay.
It can be any era, so it doesn't have to be current.
Okay, but it's obviously got to be enough that you can fit in it as well.
Yeah.
Because straight away then I thought, well, Damon Hill's 1996 Formula One Championship car, but of course, I suppose like, well,
it'd be like a wing walk, you have to be strapped to the top of it.
Yeah. Okay, so, well, for me, circuit-wise, I think, because I don't really have the experience around it, Nürburgring. Because I think that would be amazing because I wouldn't know where I'm going, and that would make it even more of a thrill, like a roller coaster. Car wise, I think the original McLaren F1.
Yeah,
don't you?
That'd be a good car. Yeah,
I think I would have to say, driver wise, I would have to say something a bit different. So somebody like Andre Lotterer.
Oh, okay.
Because I've always been a fan of his. We did a job together in Germany, and you sit with people like that and you realise how good they are. So yeah, he's not in Formula One, but boy, you know, he's impressive. He's been doing Formula E, but I remember he went to Goodwood for the first time. I can't remember exactly what he was driving now, whether it was a Cobra or something. I can't remember, to be honest. But it was his first time there, and he almost won it. And you should have seen the car control he had, and the ability to hop into an old car like that when that's not his experience at all, and the way he drove, it just blew me away, to be honest. So yeah, that would be my answer. So if anybody's not sure who Andre Lotterer is, who he is, he's been a Porsche factory driver for a long time. And yeah, he's now doing Formula E, which was on this weekend, by the way. I'm going to be brutally honest. It's got some of the best drivers in the world in it, but I do struggle to watch it. It was at London, wasn't it? And I really wanted to really like it and enjoy it. I think it's such a great concept. Get these, drivers and cars to the cities. What a great concept. But personally, certainly on TV anyway, it just looks too tight and naddery, like this big car going around a kart circuit kind of thing.
Yeah, because they're heavy. They're heavier than a Formula One car.
Yeah, so but hey, it is what it is. But for me, yeah, that's my answer. What about you?
So I think old Nürburgring. It's got to be the Nürburgring, really, just because it lasts longer. And I'd want something.
Just think, you wouldn't know where you're going.
No.
Well, you might, but I don't know very well. No. So.
But I want something that's going to move about.
Yeah.
So something like I don't know, 250 GTO, and really old front engine Ferrari, and something like Jim Clark.
Yeah.
Because I think you could relax and enjoy it, even though it's moving about.
Yeah.
If I knew it wasn't going to die,
yeah,
then I would get on the back of Michael Dunlop and go around the TT circuit. But you never really know with Michael, do you?
No, exactly. And then you're on a bike as well, which is a bit more terrifying.
That'd be pretty electric.
Yeah. Oh, it would. But he's wired. Well, like a lot of people doing the TT, I think they are wired differently to a bike racer who does circuit racing. You get some that do come over and do the TT as well, but I think you have to have a different mentality.
Well, there's one in particular who I think he holds the lap record now in the Isle of Man now, doesn't he? What's he? I can never remember his name. That he's a front runner in the superbikes. Somebody will say he's no now. Yeah, it came to me, then it went again. But he's really quick on the TT and he's really quick on short circuits, which is unusual. Yeah. Because Josh Brooks has gone over and he's British Superbike champion.
Yeah.
But he's not done. He's been all right. He's been there or thereabouts in the TT, but he's not been bang on the pace.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's definitely different. And I remember Cole Fogarty, doing both, and he certainly,
Yeah, he was quick on both.
But opened his eyes at the difference of doing the TT to,
But he said he got to a point with the TT where he thought, right, it's enough of that now.
Exactly, because I think it's just that dangerous, I'm sure people like Rossi say, God, no, I'd never do that, I think Sam
he's been over and had a look, hasn't he?
No, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly, obviously, week just gone, it's been a bit quiet on the motorsport front. We are coaching Sarah, one of our drivers, aren't we? Actually, tonight on the simulator, tomorrow on the sim. Fingers crossed her engine will be ready. Monday we'll be doing a track day, getting ready for her race at Silverstone. She doesn't know Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, so there's lots to do there, isn't there? So But this coming weekend, there is loads of motorsport. So for anybody who wants to have a weekend sat at home watching lots of motorsport, we've got British Touring Car at Alton Park, so 10 minutes from us down here. Obviously Formula 1, what is it, the Hungarian Grand Prix, I think it is. Yeah. FIA F3, which I always love anyway, because, you know, these are the drivers of the future, so it's nice to see how they're getting on. W Series are somewhere else, but they're out. But for me, another exciting one is the GT World Challenge, because it's the 24-hour Spa, which is always a special thing to watch. Yeah. So yeah, if you guys, with that, you'll have to go on YouTube and put it in, and you'll find the channel basically for the GT World Challenge. But I'd certainly recommend, if you're into motorsport, try that out, because it's a special one, 24-hour Spa. Obviously we're going to probably predominantly follow the Formula 1 and touring car, but you know, yeah, there's plenty to look at and watch this weekend. We are actually doing some filming this week with some of the guests that we've mentioned, which is exciting, and then we're going to gradually put those out on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. So we will, if you have subscribed, then you'll get a notification on it. If not, just keep an eye out, obviously, and you'll see some very exciting guests and from all sorts of different areas. So yeah, so hopefully you guys and girls will enjoy that too. So, well, I think that's it.
That's kind of it, I think. Yeah. Peter Hickman, by the way, was the bike racer.
Oh, Peter Hickman.
Hickman, yeah.
Ah, okay.
Sorry,
there
Peter.
we go.
He probably doesn't listen, but sorry, Peter.
Anyway, guys and girls, thanks so much for listening or watching if you're watching on YouTube. Always appreciate your support. Please do get in touch. We're going to do more and more little clips on social media accounts as well, so Instagram, even going to go on TikTok. I feel a bit too old for TikTok, but I'm being pushed into that one, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. As long as I don't have to do any stupid dancing and changing my dress, like when I click my fingers or something, then I'll be happy.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Anyway, we will see you soon. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.